Hello and welcome. Whether you're listening in the quiet hours of the night or resting in a calm moment during the day, this gentle journey invites you to step into a world of flickering torchlight and stone-walled stillness. Make yourself comfortable. Let your breath soften and slow. Allow the sounds of the modern world to fade as we drift into the hushed evenings of medieval Europe, where castles settle into darkness and life continues beneath the stars. This is medieval Europe nightlife and castle living, a serene, reflective exploration of how people rested, worked, and found comfort after sunset. Take a slow, steady breath. As you exhale, imagine the night settling over a fortified castle, thick walls holding warmth, torches glowing softly along corridors, and the quiet murmur of voices echoing through great halls. The day's labor has ended, but life does not stop. In this peaceful retelling, there is no danger, no urgency, only gentle observation. We move slowly through shadowed chambers and moonlit courtyards, noticing how evenings unfolded and how routines brought a sense of safety and order. Picture yourself standing within the castle walls as night deepens. The fire crackles softly in the hearth. Guards walk their rounds along the battlements. Servants finish their tasks, and families gather close against the cold stone. Beyond the walls, villages dim to darkness, guided by starlight and the distant call of night creatures. Though you remain safely where you are, you may sense the steady rhythm of medieval life, the balance between vigilance and rest, labor and quiet reflection. In the chapters ahead, we'll explore nighttime life in medieval Europe, how castles were lived in after dusk, how people slept, ate, kept watch, and found warmth and reassurance in a world lit by flame and moonlight. We'll move gently through these moments, letting history unfold like a calm night beneath ancient stars. For now, settle in, breathe deeply, and allow this peaceful journey into medieval nights and castle living to begin. It is nightfall in a medieval castle, and a deep tranquility begins to settle within its mighty stone walls. The last hues of sunset fade from the sky, leaving a gentle purple twilight over the surrounding countryside. High on a hill, the castle stands vigilant, its towers and battlements outlined against the dimming light. A cool breeze whispers through the nearby forest and over the castle's moat, carrying with it the scents of pine and wood smoke. In the moat below, the dark water ripples gently, catching glints of torchlight from the walls in broken streaks of orange. A lone frog plops into the water with a quiet splash, unseen in the growing dark. As daylight withdraws, those within the fortress prepare for the coming night, moving through age-old routines that bring comfort and calm after the labors of the day. From the ramparts, Thomas, one of the castle's watchmen, gazes out over the darkening landscape. Below, the village nestled in the valley is already cloaked in shadows. Tiny orange glimmers show where cottage hearth fires burn as peasants finish their simple suppers. The fields beyond lie fallow and quiet, and in the far distance, an owl gives a mellow hoot that echoes against the stone parapets. Thomas pulls his woolen cloak a little tighter around his shoulders as the air grows cooler. He feels the rough, familiar texture of the cloak and the weight of his sword at his side, reassuring him that he is warm and well armed against the chill and any unseen dangers of the dark. Along the top of the walls, a few torches flicker in iron sconces, casting dancing shadows on the crenellated stones. Now and then, a moth flutters too close to a flame, and a small bat swoops out of the darkness to snatch it, vanishing again as swiftly as a shadow. The torch flames sway gently with each gust of wind, illuminating Thomas's breath as a faint mist in the cold air. To him, the castle at dusk is both beautiful and solemn. He listens to the quiet sounds that only grow audible as human activity calms. The distant rush of water in the stream by the mill, the rustle of leaves, and the occasional clank of a chain as the portcullis at the gatehouse is lowered for the night. With practiced patience, Thomas begins his first slow walk of the evening along the battlements, eyes scanning the darkness beyond. Each footstep is a soft thud on the stone walkway, the sound absorbed by the thick night air. Far below, in the courtyard, a pair of stable boys finish shutting the heavy wooden doors of the barn after making sure the horses are fed and bedded on fresh straw. The boys murmur to each other, their voices hushed out of respect for the peaceful evening, then disappear into the stable loft, where they will sleep above the warmth of the animals. In the small chapel by the castle's inner ward, candlelight begins to glow through a narrow stained glass window, painting colored patterns on the ground outside. Brother Matthew, a traveling monk who is a guest of the castle tonight, has gone to the chapel to light candles and offer up the last prayers of the day. The gentle sound of his chants drifts out into the night air, a soothing, rhythmic Latin prayer that mingles with the other subtle sounds of nighttime. Inside the castle's keep, the atmosphere is one of calm anticipation. Servants move through the corridors quietly, tending to final tasks before the castle settles completely. In the great hall, Marion the kitchen maid steps lightly across the flagstone floor, her leather shoes barely making a sound. She is laying fresh rushes mixed with sprigs of lavender and thyme near the high table, and as she scatters them, the herbs release a soft, comforting aroma. The great hall's earlier clamor has faded. Now there is only the crackle of logs in the central hearth, and the muted clink of silverware being set in place for the evening meal. High above, the timber rafters of the ceiling are lost in shadow. The flickering firelight does not reach that high, leaving the upper parts of the hall in darkness and giving the impression of an endless night sky overhead within the castle itself. The hall's stone walls are adorned with rich tapestries depicting legendary battles and forest hunts, their threads catching the low light. On one, a knight in silver armor slays a golden dragon amid a green wood. On another, ladies and lords in bright garments pursue a stag. In the wavering firelight, these woven figures almost seem to move, then fall still whenever one tries to focus on them, as if the castle's memories were stirring in the shadows. These heavy tapestries do more than decorate. They help insulate the room from the chills seeping through the thick walls. The narrow windows along the hall are shuttered for the night to keep out drafts. Where a small gap in the wood allows a slip of cold air through, a nearby tapestry flutters gently as if a shy ghost were passing. But it is only the night breeze, kept largely at bay. Marion pauses a moment to warm her hands near the hearth. The fire is robust, and waves of warmth emanate from it, carrying the savory scent of roasted meats that have been turning on the spit. The aroma mingles with the fragrant herbs underfoot, creating a feeling of homely comfort. She closes her eyes briefly, enjoying the warmth on her face after a long day spent in the chilly kitchens preparing the Lord's Supper. Up at the dais, the high table is set for the castle's lord and lady and their closest companions. Polished pewter plates and cups catch the firelight, reflecting soft glints. A fine embroidered tablecloth has been laid out, and the Lord's chair, a heavy oak seat with carvings of lions, stands ready. High above the dais at the front of the hall, Lord Robert's banner hangs from a beam, a proud golden lion on a field of deep blue, its edges gently fluttering whenever the night air creeps in. Even in low light, that heraldic emblem watches over the feast, a symbol of the Lord's guardianship through dark and light. Lady Isabella, the lady of the castle, enters the hall with a graceful calm, the train of her dark blue gown whispering over the floor behind her. A jeweled belt cinches her waist, and a delicate veil covers her braided hair. Despite her noble status, her expression is gentle and her movements measured, as if she too is seeking the peace that evening brings. She approaches the hearth first, extending pale hands toward the flames. The firelight dances in her kind brown eyes as she takes a slow, contented breath of the warm air. From a side door, the steward, Edwin, emerges carrying a silver jug of spiced wine. His footsteps are quiet and measured. He has overseen these suppers for many years and knows how to keep everything running smoothly, yet unobtrusively. Edwin is middle-aged, with graying hair at his temples and a calm, capable look. He wears a simple but well-kept tunic of deep green, and a chain of office, a sign of his authority in managing the household, rests around his neck. He nods respectfully to Lady Isabella. "My lady, the meal is nearly ready," he says in a low, soothing voice. Lady Isabella offers him a warm smile. "Thank you, Edwin," she replies softly. Her voice carries a refined accent, but also genuine warmth. She glances around the hall, taking in the cozy scene, the fire, the set table, the soft candlelight that a few servants are now bringing in. Beeswax candles, reserved for the heat table, are placed in iron candelabras and lit, their flames steady and bright. A gentle scent of honey drifts from them as they burn. In the rest of the hall, a few cheaper tallow candles and simple oil lamps have been lit for illumination. Their light is more flickering, and they release a faint, greasy aroma. Most of the common folk of the castle will dine in the shadows of the lower tables or in the kitchen, content with just enough light to see their meal. At a polished oak sideboard against the wall, a young page carefully pours water into a ceramic basin in preparation for the hand-washing ritual that precedes the meal. It is a nightly custom. The lord and lady and any guests will rinse their hands with rose-scented water poured from a pitcher, a symbol of courtesy and cleanliness before dining. The page arranges a linen towel nearby and then stands at attention, ready for the moment it will be needed. From outside the hall comes the muffled sound of the castle bell tolling 8 times, the hour of the evening. Its deep tones resonate through the stone corridors, a reminder that night has truly fallen. The bell also signals any stragglers that it is time to come inside the walls. The gates will be shut now until dawn. Thomas, on the battlements, hears it and silently offers a small prayer that this night, like many before it, will pass safely and uneventfully for all under the castle's care. As the echoes of the bell fade, the lord of the castle appears in the doorway of the great hall. Lord Robert is a tall man with a dignified bearing. Though his title commands respect, his face is open and relaxed this evening. He has set aside his sword and wears a comfortable tunic of burgundy wool suitable for a peaceful night at home. With him is Brother Matthew, the monk who has just come from the chapel. Brother Matthew's robes, brown and travel-worn, brush the floor as he walks. His presence in the castle is welcomed. He brought news from a distant abbey and will say grace before the meal. The monk's eyes are soft and observant, taking in the warmth of the hall appreciatively. Lady Isabella steps forward to greet her husband and the monk. Servants pull out the heavy oak chairs for them at the high table. The lady and lord share a few quiet words, a gentle inquiry about each other's day, and then both turn to Brother Matthew. "We are honored by your company and your blessings tonight," Lady Isabella says kindly to the monk. Brother Matthew smiles, his lined face serene. "It is I who am grateful, my lady," he replies, voice low and calming. "Your home offers a welcome refuge for a traveler at night. God reward your generosity." He inclines his head respectfully. Edwin the steward then raises a discreet hand signal to the assembled household in the hall. At once, everyone, from Lady Isabella and Lord Robert at the high table to the servants who line the walls, falls still and quiet. In the hush, Brother Matthew begins to intone the grace. He makes the sign of the cross and speaks in Latin first, his voice a gentle rhythm that resonates in the silence. "Benedic Domine, nos et haec tua dona." Bless us, O Lord, and these thy gifts. The words flow with practiced ease, and even those who don't know the language understand the reverence in his tone. Then, in the common tongue, he adds, "May God bless this food and those who prepared it, and keep us safe through the night." All present murmur Amen in response, crossing themselves or bowing their heads. The brief prayer seems to deepen the tranquility in the hall, as if sanctifying the peaceful evening. With grace concluded, the castle's nightly feast gently begins. Servants begin to move again, quietly bringing out the first dishes of the supper. The clatter of a large platter being set on the high table is muffled by a thick cloth to keep the noise soft. Steam rises from a tender stew of winter vegetables and herbs, one of the simple but comforting dishes to start the meal. Lord Robert picks up the ladle and serves his lady first, filling Lady Isabella's bowl with care. She thanks him with a gentle smile. Around them, those seated at lower trestle tables also begin to eat, though none lifted a spoon before the lord and lady took their first taste. The household staff and men-at-arms murmur blessings of their own as they tuck into trenchers of thick lentil, pottage and yesterday's bread softened in broth. A few share a pitcher of small ale, the common weak beer that quenches thirst without inebriation. Their fare is simpler than that at the high table, but on a chilly night such as this, it is filling and welcome. A roasted chicken, glazed with honey and fragrant spices, is presented next on a wooden trencher. The rich smell of the roasted meat joins the medley of aromas in the hall. Marian steps forward with another servant to assist in carving the bird. Her movements are deft, yet deferential. She holds the platter steady, while the other servant, the castle's carver, uses a sharp knife to slice portions for the high table. The knife makes a soft scraping sound against the roast's crisp skin. Lady Isabella accepts a small portion, as does Brother Matthew. Lord Robert takes a hearty slice for himself, but even as he does, he quietly signals for some to be set aside for the guards on duty tonight. A thoughtful gesture not lost on Thomas, who will later receive a share in the guardhouse. Spiced wine is poured into silver goblets for the nobles at the high table. The wine, warmed and infused with cloves, cinnamon, and a hint of citrus, sends tendrils of sweet fragrance into the air. Lord Robert raises his cup subtly toward his wife and their guest, not quite a formal toast, but a warm gesture of hospitality. To a peaceful evening, he says in a low, content tone, and to your health, Brother Matthew. The monk inclines his head gratefully and sips the wine. Its warmth spreads through him, a pleasant comfort after a day of travel on foot. As the meal progresses, the great hall remains hushed and tranquil. People speak in murmurs if they speak at all. The crackling of the fire and the occasional gentle clink of a cup or spoon are the loudest sounds. At the far end of the hall, one of the Lord's hounds lies curled by the hearth, snoring softly, oblivious to the world. A pair of gray cats slip through the shadows near the walls, hoping to find a dropped morsel, their tails twitching in anticipation. After the main dishes have been tasted and hunger is softened, Lord Robert gives a slight nod to Edwin. Understanding the signal, Edwin quietly beckons forward the young minstrel who has been waiting patiently near a pillar. Alan the minstrel steps into the modest circle of firelight and candle glow at the center of the hall, a lute cradled in his arms. He bows respectfully to the high table. His traveling cloak has been removed to reveal a tunic of faded green, and his boots are dusty from the road. He is grateful for the hospitality and eager to please. Good minstrel, Lady Isabella says softly, we would gladly enjoy a song as we dine, something gentle to suit the evening. Her voice is kindly, and Alan feels encouraged by the request. With pleasure, my lady, Alan replies, his voice quiet and mellifluous. He settles onto a low stool that a servant brings for him. With nimble fingers, he begins to pluck a slow, soothing melody on the lute. The notes trickle through the air like a gentle brook. Conversations around the hall fade into silence as all ears attend to the music. Alan sings a ballad, a tale of a moonlit garden and two lovers reunited after a long journey. His voice, warm and clear, carries a gentle refrain. By silver moon in secret glade, two hearts unite, no more afraid. The simple lyrics float through the hall like a caress, enchanting all who listen. Lady Isabella finds herself relaxing deeply at the sound. She leans back slightly in her chair, her hands wrapped around the stem of her goblet, and lets the music wash over her. The ballad's lyrics speak of safe harbors and gating stars, themes of homecoming that resonate with everyone in the hall on this peaceful night. Lord Robert's stern features soften as he listens. He reaches for his wife's hand under the table and gives it a light, affectionate squeeze. Brother Matthew closes his eyes for a moment, perhaps saying a quiet prayer of thanks for the beauty of the music and the blessing of shelter. At the lower tables, guards and servants also listen, some smiling to themselves. Marian, who is standing with a jug of ale ready to serve, allows herself to hum quietly, along with the familiar refrain of the song. She knows this melody. It's an old one often sung in her own village at harvest time, about gratitude for safe returns. For a moment, Marion's thoughts drift to her family in a distant hamlet. She pictures her mother and younger siblings finishing their own simple evening routine, perhaps already asleep by their hearth. The music makes her both a little homesick and comforted at once. She promises herself she will whisper a prayer for them later tonight. The hall's atmosphere is enchanted by the minstrel's performance. The dance of shadows on the walls seems to slow, as if even the flickering lights are calmed by the lullaby-like tune. When Alan comes to the end of the ballad, he strums a final soft chord that lingers in the air. There is a gentle sigh throughout the room, as though everyone has been holding their breath. A few appreciative murmurs rise. Lady Isabella and Lord Robert both smile and offer quiet thanks. They will ensure the minstrel has a hot meal and a bed of straw by the kitchen hearth tonight for his efforts. Emboldened by the warm reception, Alan continues with another piece, this time an instrumental. His lute paints a delicate soundscape. One can almost hear in the notes the image of silvery moonlight over calm waters, a tune with no words needed. While he plays, the servants discreetly move again to clear away trenchers and bring a final course. A plate of apples baked in flaky pastry with cinnamon, a treat to end the meal. Lady Isabella insists that Brother Matthew take the first bite of the dessert as an honored guest. The monk chuckles quietly and obliges, savoring the sweetness and nodding his approval. One by one, the plates are emptied, and the people of the castle have had their fill. A comfortable fullness and drowsiness begin to settle in, amplified by the gentle music and the warmth of the hall. Lord Robert, seeing that everyone has eaten well, gives a small nod of thanks to the steward and to the cook lingering by the doorway. The cook, a stout woman with flour still dusting her apron, beams quietly with pride and relief that her efforts have pleased the household. At length, the supper draws to a close. Lady Isabella dabs her lips with a linen napkin and takes a final sip of spiced wine. "That was a wonderful meal," she says softly, catching Marion's eye and giving a grateful nod that encompasses all the servants' work. Marion curtsies, and though she does not speak at the high table unless spoken to, her face glows with quiet pride at the acknowledgement. Brother Matthew offers a short closing grace, just a simple sentence. "For the food and fellowship we give thanks. May God grant us all a peaceful night." His words, though plain, carry a gentle power in their sincerity. The hall echoes with another soft chorus of Amen. The remnants of the feast will be dealt with by the servants, but for the nobility and guests, the day's formalities are done. Lord Robert pushes back his heavy chair, the legs scraping lightly on the floor, and stands. Those in the hall who are seated now also rise in respect. The Lord stretches slightly, rolling his shoulders, as a man does after a satisfying meal and a long day. He drapes an arm around his wife's shoulder lovingly. "Come, my dear," he says to Lady Isabella. The hour grows later, and our chambers beckon. His tone is gentle and a little teasing. Lady Isabella smiles and stands as well, taking Lord Robert's arm. She shares a look with her steward that says everything is in his capable hands now. Edwin bows his head slightly, already planning how to supervise the cleanup and secure the hall for the night after the family withdraws. As the lord and lady make their way to the door, those assembled bow and curtsy. The only sounds are the crackle of the fire and the quiet rustle of clothing. Before exiting, Lady Isabella pauses and turns to Brother Matthew and the minstrel Alan, who remain near the high table. "Brother, please take your rest as you need. A guest chamber has been prepared for you," she says kindly. "And Master Alan," she addresses the minstrel, "the hospitality of our castle is yours tonight. Warm yourself by the kitchen hearth and eat your fill." Her words are sincere and caring, reflecting the noble obligation and genuine desire to care for those under her roof. Both men express their gratitude. Brother Matthew gives a slight bow, saying, "You have my thanks and the blessings of my abbey for your generosity." Alan bows deeply, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders, knowing he won't be out in the cold night. "Thank you, my lady. Your kindness won't be forgotten," he replies softly. With that, Lord Robert and Lady Isabella depart the great hall, their figures disappearing into the shadows of the corridor beyond, accompanied by Lady Isabella's lady-in-waiting, who appears with a lantern to guide her. At the doorway, a guard in a gleaming breastplate carrying a halberd falls in step at a respectful distance to escort the lord and lady to their chambers. A soft exhale of breath leaves the remaining folk in the hall as the noble family retires. The formalities are over, and now the castle folk can attend to their own gentler nighttime tasks. Edwin claps his hands quietly to draw the servants' focus. In a low voice, mindful of maintaining the peace of the evening, he instructs them, "Begin clearing the tables, and mind the dogs don't snatch the bones. Marion, cover the leftovers and take a platter to the guard house. John," he nods to the carver, "please help carry these ale casks back to the pantry." Each person nods and moves with purpose, yet the mood remains unrushed and subdued. No one wants to shatter the calm with needless noise. Alan carefully slips out of the way as servants start clearing. He tucks his lute safely back into its leather case. Before he can head toward the kitchens in search of the promised warm hearth, he feels a gentle tug at his sleeve. It's Marion, balancing a tray with a few covered dishes. "Come with me," she whispers kindly. "We'll get you a hot meal." The minstrel smiles gratefully and follows her out of the hall toward the kitchens, leaving the grand but now dimming space of the great hall behind. In the corridor outside the great hall, the castle is dim and hushed. A single lantern carried by Lady Isabella's lady-in-waiting casts just enough light to guide their small party. Instead of retiring directly to her chambers, Lady Isabella has decided to stop by the chapel for a moment of prayer before bed, a practice she finds soothing. Brother Matthew walks beside her, his hands folded in his sleeves, glad to lead a brief compline service for those who wish to join. Lord Robert, feeling the pleasant fatigue of a full stomach and a peaceful day, gently squeezes his wife's hand and bids her good night at the base of the stairs that lead to their private apartments. "I will stoke the fire in our room and await you, my dear," he says. "Don't be long." She nods affectionately, watching him ascend the spiral staircase with the escorting guard's torch lighting the stones until he disappears around a curve. Then, with a silent gesture to Brother Matthew and her maid, Lady Isabella continues on toward the chapel. The chapel is a small, intimate space, nestled within one of the castle's inner buildings. Pushing open the heavy oak door, Lady Isabella is greeted by the faint aroma of incense and beeswax. Inside, a few candles already burns upon the altar, which is draped in a simple white cloth. A small wooden crucifix stands at its center between the candles, and in a wall niche nearby, a carved wooden figure of Saint Michael, the castle's patron, keeps silent vigil, its wings and sword rendered gentle in the wavering light. The colored glass of a narrow arched window depicts a saint holding a lantern, and by night the window's vibrant hues are dark. But the candle flames cause the glass to glimmer faintly, hinting at the reds and blues that will shine when morning comes. Lady Isabella slips into a front pew, made of creaking old wood, softened by age. Her lady-in-waiting kneels just behind her. Brother Matthew approaches the altar and bows his head in reverence. In the quiet that enfolds them, the only sounds are the distant muffled steps of a guard in the corridor and the soft crackle of one thick church candle on the altar. The monk's voice then rises in a gentle chant, singing the ancient night times prayer, Telucis ante terminum, rerum creator possumus. To thee before the close of day, creator of all, we pray. His Latin is resonant yet hushed, each syllable pronounced with devotion. The melody is plain and soothing, a familiar compline hymn meant to bring peace to the soul before sleep. Lady Isabella bows her head, her hands clasped together. She finds comfort in the ritual words, even if she only understands some of the Latin. The meaning lives in her heart, a plea for divine watchfulness through the dark of night. Brother Matthew finishes the short hymn and recites a psalm often used at night, his voice scarcely above a whisper. Scapulis suis obumbrabit tibi, et sub pennis eius sperabis, he intones. He shall cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you shall trust. The ancient words of the 91st Psalm roll out soothingly, meant to dispel the fears of darkness. After a few more moments of prayer, a litany of protection asking for angels to guard those in the castle, Brother Matthew concludes with a gentle Amen. He turns and gives Lady Isabella a kind smile. Sleep in God's peace, my lady, he says quietly. And you as well, brother, she replies, her voice low and grateful. Thank you for leading us in prayer. Leaving the chapel, Lady Isabella feels a profound sense of calm. The fears and uncertainties that sometimes accompany darkness for others do not weigh on her tonight. With faith and the security of the castle walls around her, she steps back into the corridor where the air feels a touch cooler after the warmth of the chapel. She draws her embroidered shawl closer around her shoulders as she and her maid ascend the staircase toward her bedchamber. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the castle, Edwin the steward is making his rounds to ensure all is in order before he himself retires. He walks through the now empty great hall, his keen eyes scanning for any stray candle left burning too long or any window shutter not secured. Satisfied that the hall's enormous hearth is safely banked with ashes to keep its coals glowing until morning without risk, he exits into the courtyard. The night air has grown colder still. He pauses, seeing his own breath, and looks up at the sky. It is a clear night. Countless stars shimmer overhead like spilled salt across black velvet. The moon, a waning crescent, hangs low, providing only a frail light. Edwin hears the familiar sound of boots on stone as Thomas completes another circuit of his patrol atop the curtain wall. "All secure, Thomas?" Edwin calls up softly, his voice barely above normal volume, but carrying in the stillness. Thomas peers over the battlement down into the courtyard, the orange glow of a wall-mounted torch lighting half his face. "All's well, sir," he responds in a quiet, steady tone. He has seen nothing amiss, no movement beyond the walls except the swaying of trees. No calls for help from the town, no suspicious shadows. Edwin gives a satisfied nod and a small wave of acknowledgement. It eases his mind to have reliable eyes on watch. The steward continues his walk, passing by the small kennel near the gatehouse, where two large mastiffs are chained for the night. They raise their massive heads as he approaches, ears pricked. He murmurs a low word to them and reaches through the slats to give one a reassuring pat. Recognizing his scent, the dogs emit gentle chuffs and thump their tails against the wooden kennel walls, then settle back down to continue their watchful doze. Edwin leaves them to their rest and crosses the courtyard once more. Stopping by the main gatehouse, he checks in with the guards posted there. Inside the gatehouse chamber, two guards are quietly chatting beside a small brazier of coals that keeps their tiny room warm. They spring to attention when they see Edwin, but he merely smiles and motions for them to be at ease. Through a narrow, arrow-slit window, Edwin can see the massive wooden gates barred for the night and the iron spikes of the portcullis down. In front of the gatehouse, the drawbridge has been raised. Everything is as it should be. The castle is now a secure fortress of slumbering souls. "One of you remember to take that platter from the kitchen to share," Edwin gently reminds the guards, referring to the food Lord Robert set aside. On a side table covered by a cloth is indeed a tray with bread, cheese, and slices of the roasted meat. A hearty meal will keep you warm through your vigil. The older guard smiles gratefully, and the younger one, scarcely more than a boy, bobs his head, already eyeing the bread with anticipation. Edwin leaves them to their quiet repast and crosses toward the far side of the courtyard. Passing the tall, dark bulk of the keep, he notices how the windows of the Lord's solar are now dark. Lord Robert and Lady Isabella must be in their chambers preparing for bed. A faint band of light shines out from the window of the lady's bedchamber further along the residence wing, candles still burning there as her maid helps her get ready for the night. The steward decides he will check in briefly with the lady in case any last instructions are needed, and then take his own rest. Upstairs, Lady Isabella's chambers are aglow with a gentle golden light. A candelabrum on a side table holds several beeswax candles, their flames steady since the windows have all been shuttered against the night chill. The walls here are adorned with tapestries as well, one depicting a tranquil woodland scene that seems fitting for nighttime, with embroidered deer that appear to drowse under an embroidered moon. A carved wooden screen provides privacy in one corner, where a basin and ewer stand ready for washing. Along another wall stands an oak wardrobe and a sturdy wooden chest carved with knotwork and floral patterns. Within lie Lady Isabella's fine gowns and bed, linens neatly folded by her maids. On a petite side table near the bed, her illuminated book of hours rests, a bookmark ribbon peeking from its pages in case she wishes to read a devotion. Beside it, a small vial of lavender oil catches the firelight, the source of the delicate perfume that soothes the room. Lady Isabella stands in the center of the room as her lady-in-waiting, a girl not much older than Marian, gently brushes out her long brown hair, stroke by stroke. The lady's silk gown has been exchanged for a softer linen nightgown of ivory white, and over her shoulders she wears a heavy fur-lined robe to keep her warm until she slips under the bed covers. She gazes toward the hearth, where flames dance low. Her husband had indeed come in earlier and stirred the fire to life. He has since retired to an adjoining dressing room to change. As the maid finishes braiding Isabella's hair loosely for the night, there's a quiet knock on the door. It is Edwin announcing himself. Softly, the lady-in-waiting opens the door, and Edwin bows. "My lady, is everything to your liking? Do you require anything further this evening?" he asks in a hushed tone. Lady Isabella offers a gracious smile. "All is well, Edwin. Thank you. You may rest. Just remind the housemaid to add an extra blanket to Brother Matthew's bed. These nights have grown colder." "Of course, my lady," Edwin replies. "I'll see to it at once." He hesitates a moment, then adds gently, "Sleep well. We shall keep watch." There is a touch of protectiveness in his voice. The steward sees it as part of his duty to ensure the Lord's family can sleep without worry. Lady Isabella inclines her head appreciatively. "Good night, Edwin," she says. The steward retreats, closing the door quietly, and his soft footfalls fade away down the corridor as he goes to fetch that extra blanket for the monk and then to his own small chamber. Now only Lady Isabella and her maid remain. From the adjacent dressing room, Lord Robert emerges, having donned a woolen nightshirt and a thick robe. His hair, slightly disheveled now, frames a face softened by fatigue. Seeing his wife nearly ready for bed, he smiles. "The fire is cheerful, is it not?" he remarks, nodding to the hearth where a log breaks apart, sending a swirl of sparks up the chimney. Outside their window, the wind has picked up, and a gentle rattle of a shutter shows a gust testing it. But the room remains snug. "Very cheerful," Lady Isabella agrees. She goes to the hearth and extends her hands one more time to soak in its heat. The maid takes this as her cue to quietly bid good night and slip out to her own rest, leaving the lord and lady alone. Lord Robert steps behind his wife and places his hands on her shoulders, rubbing lightly as if to massage away any remaining tension. She tilts her head back toward him appreciatively. They stand for a moment in comfortable silence, watching the flames. "It was a good day," Isabella says softly, almost to herself, "and such a peaceful evening. I'm grateful." Her husband nods. "As am I," he replies. "Not every day is this calm. We should cherish it." He glances toward the thick wooden door that leads toward the nursery down the corridor. "I trust little Robert gave the nurse an easy evening," he adds quietly. Lady Isabella's face warms at the mention of their infant son. "Yes, he fell asleep after his warm milk," she says. "I'm grateful he's content tonight." They share a relieved look, one of the many small gratitudes of parenthood, and then Lord Robert gives her shoulders a final gentle squeeze. He walks to the bed and draws back the thick quilted blankets. The bed is grand in size, built of heavy oak with posts at each corner that support a canopy overhead. Thick curtains of embroidered brocade hang from the canopy, currently tied back with cords. They can be closed to create a cozy enclosure that keeps out drafts. Inside, the bed is layered with linen sheets, wool blankets, and a luxurious fur spread that will guard against the chill of the early morning hours. Before climbing into bed, Lady Isabella moves to a small shrine on a side table where a painted wooden icon of the Virgin Mary stands. A tiny beeswax candle flickers in a holder beside it. The lady bows her head and whispers a final personal prayer, something she has done every night since childhood, giving thanks for the day's blessings and asking for protection through the night. She prays for her household, naming in her heart her husband, her infant son who sleeps in a nursery under the nurse's care, and even the servants and travelers like Brother Matthew and Alan under their roof tonight. In this moment of stillness, she feels a profound peace. The only sounds are the soft pop of the logs in the hearth and Lord Robert's gentle breathing as he waits for her. When she finishes, she extinguishes the little candle with a pinch of her fingertips, murmuring Amen. The room falls dimmer, lit now only by the hearth and the cluster of candles across the room. Lord Robert has climbed into bed and arranged the pillows. Lady Isabella joins him, the mattress dipping softly under her weight. The sheets and blankets have been warmed. One of the maids earlier took a metal pan filled with hot coals and passed it between the sheets to chase away the cold. Now the bed is wonderfully inviting, holding the day's remaining warmth at its core. She settles against the goose-down-filled pillow, pulling the heavy covers up to her chin. Her husband reaches over and gently draws the bed curtains on his side, and she does the same on hers, enclosing them in a private cocoon of warmth and darkness. The curtains mute the orange glow of the fire into a faint amber haze within their small space. Lord Robert takes his wife's hand under the blankets. "Good night, my love," he whispers. "Good night," she whispers back. They share a soft kiss, the familiarity and affection in it as comforting as the thick blankets around them. Within minutes, Lord Robert's breathing evens out into the slow rhythm of sleep. His body and mind, weary from the day's duties, surrender easily to rest. Lady Isabella closes her eyes and lets herself sink into slumber. That night her dreams are gentle. She finds herself strolling through a summer garden from her girlhood, sunlight streaming through green leaves, her late father's laughter echoing warmly from afar. In another dreaming scene, she cradles her infant son beneath a sky of twinkling stars, each star transforming into a tiny candle that watches over them. These peaceful visions drift through her unconscious mind, and a faint, contented smile settles on her face as she sleeps. Edwin, true to his word, stops by the linen closet on the way back and grabs an extra wool blanket for Brother Matthew. The guest chamber given to the monk is small but comfortable, situated near the chapel. When Edwin taps lightly and enters, he finds Brother Matthew kneeling by the bedside, lips moving in silent prayer. The monk looks up and smiles. He had already wrapped himself in a thin blanket against the chill. "I've brought another cover for you, brother, so you stay warm," Edwin whispers. "Thank you, that is most kind," Brother Matthew replies softly. Edwin drapes the heavy blankets over the existing one. Immediately, the monk can feel the added warmth. He gives a grateful nod. "May God bless your rest as well." Edwin inclines his head in thanks and takes his leave, closing the door gently. Now, at last, his duties for the day are done. A deep tiredness has settled in his shoulders, but it is the satisfying kind that comes from a day's work well completed. He walks through the now deserted corridors towards his own quarters. The castle feels almost like a different world at this hour, the rush and business replaced by an almost sacred quiet. Each footstep he makes sounds louder than usual, and he consciously steps lightly so as not to disturb the silence. His chamber is located near the great hall, a modest room just large enough for a bed, a chest, and a small writing table by the arrow-slit window. Pushing open the wooden door, Edwin enters and latches it behind him. The room is cold. The small brazier in the corner holds only a few faintly glowing coals from earlier. He lights a single tallow candle from the lantern he carried and sets it on the table, illuminating the space with a weak, flickering light. The smell of the tallow is earthy and familiar. Edwin shrugs off his day tunic and changes into a simple nightshirt of undyed wool. He drapes his cloak over the end of the bed for extra warmth. He knows from long experience that the castle's chill will deepen toward morning. Sitting on the edge of his bed, he rubs his knees, feeling the ache there, an old injury from years ago when he had been a young footman running errands in all weather. He reminds himself to ask the herbalist for a bit of salve tomorrow. Before lying down, the steward takes a moment to jot a quick note by candlelight in a small, leather-bound ledger he keeps, a reminder that they will need to tap a new cask of ale in the coming days, as he noticed tonight's cask running low. He also writes a single line of thanks, a personal habit of his, to mark gratitude for a peaceful day, something like, "No troubles this day, Deo gratias." The Latin for "thanks be to God" flows in his careful, cramped handwriting. He closes the ledger and places it on the table. A ring of keys at his belt jingles softly as he moves. He unhooks it and sets it by the candle, for once allowing himself to set aside his duties until morning. Then Edwin kneels by his bedside, as is his nightly custom, and bows his head. In a soft whisper, he offers his own prayer into the stillness. "Watch over this house tonight, O Lord, and let your angels guard our sleep." It is a simple plea, but it gives him comfort. He has seen enough winters, illnesses, and even times of unrest in his life to know that peace is not to be taken for granted. When his prayer is finished, Edwin climbs into his bed and blows out the candle. Darkness enfolds the room, relieved only by a faint glow from the half-covered brazier and the thin beam of moonlight slipping through the narrow window. He tugs the quilts up to his chin and settles into the straw-filled mattress. For a moment, he allows himself to enjoy the relief of being horizontal after a long day on his feet. His body relaxes into the bedding. In the quiet, the steward's mind drifts. He imagines his late wife. She had been the castle's dairymaid years ago, and her memory often visits him at night. He imagines her gentle voice telling him not to worry so much. In his half-dreaming state, a memory unfolds. A warm summer night years ago, when she was still by his side, the two of them sneaking up to these same battlements after the household slept, fingers entwined, to watch a cascade of shooting stars together. The joy on her face under the starry sky is a picture he will carry forever. The memory doesn't pain him now. Instead, it wraps around him like a comforting quilt. He likes to think she still watches over him in moments like this, a kindly spirit in the darkness, urging him to rest. As Edwin's eyelids grow heavy, he listens to the faint sounds through the thick walls, distant muffled steps from a guard making rounds on the rampart above, the wind occasionally murmuring against the castle stones. These sounds are reassuring to him. They mean life and vigilance. Wrapped in layers of wool in the darkness of his small room, he feels at ease. His breathing slows, and soon the faithful steward drifts into a light sleep, one ear subconsciously open to any disturbance, but otherwise finally at rest. Down in the kitchens, Marion pushes open the heavy door and is greeted by a wave of warmth and the rich medley of smells. Bundles of dried herbs, rosemary, sage, and thyme from the last harvest season hang from a beam, their faded fragrance mixing with the stronger aromas of smoke and yesterday's cooked meats. The kitchen is a large, high-ceilinged room dominated by an open hearth at one end big enough to roast an entire pig. Now, however, the roasting fire has dwindled to red embers. Only a smaller cooking fire remains, over which hangs an iron pot of stew kept warm for the servants' supper. A few brass oil lamps are fixed to the walls, burning with small, steady flames that cast a low yellow glow over the work tables and the racks of cooking utensils. Marion sets the covered tray she carried from the hall onto a table. Alan the minstrel stands by, hesitating, until the cook, Mistress Agnes, waves him in. Mistress Agnes is a stout woman with rosy cheeks and sleeves rolled up to her elbows despite the late hour. She has been cleaning since the dinner was sent out and looks forward to collapsing into bed, but she would not turn down a last cup of ale to unwind. "Come in, then. Don't be shy," she says to Alan kindly but briskly. "You've earned your supper tonight." "Thank you, mistress," Alan replies quietly. He removes his lute case from his shoulder and sets it gently in a corner, then rubs his hands together, feeling the comforting heat of the kitchen hearth. It is easily the warmest place in the castle at this hour. Marion lifts the lid off the tray, revealing generous leftovers, slices of roast chicken and pork, half a loaf of crusty bread, a wedge of yellow cheese, and even a couple of the baked apple pastries that were not touched at the high table. Her own mouth waters at the sight. Sweet pastries and rich meats are a rare luxury for the servants. She has to swallow a surge of eager hunger and carefully distributes the food fairly, determined that everyone get a taste of the feast's bounty. Still, when she hands a plate to Alan, she can't resist quickly popping a small piece of honey-glazed apple pastry into her own mouth. The sugary tang makes her close her eyes in brief bliss. Then, regaining composure, she continues working with a faint smile. "Here you are. It's not often we get spiced roast like this," she says, referring to the cinnamon and pepper on the pork. Alan takes the plate gratefully and settles on a wooden stool near the hearth. "It smells wonderful," he says, and he means it doubly. The food and the cozy kitchen itself, with its smoky, well-seasoned air. Mistress Agnes pours a ladle of hot stew from the pot into a bowl and offers it to him as well. The minstrel thanks her and eagerly soaks a piece of bread in the thick broth, savoring the simple, hearty flavor. Marion and Mistress Agnes also take their share of supper. Another scullery maid, a girl named Bet, who had been scrubbing pots at the sink, dries her hands and joins them, exhausted but hungry. They sit clustered near the hearth on stools and overturned buckets, enjoying the warmth on their backs as they eat. There is a camaraderie among those who labor in the kitchen. All the grand events of the castle trickle down to this room eventually. Now that the rush of the day is over, they can finally relax, voices low and punctuated by the occasional clink of wooden spoons on clay bowls. Mistress Agnes lets out a long breath and stretches her arms. Ah, my bones ache. These cold nights do me no kindness, she says, rolling her shoulders. She reaches to a shelf and takes down a small clay jar of ointment, rubbing a bit in her hands. Its fragrance of camphor and rosemary rises in the warm air. Marion watches sympathetically. The cook has been on her feet since before dawn. Alan, between mouthfuls of stew, also shares tidbits of news from his travels. Distant villages preparing for winter, a pilgrimage route, bustling with people from many lands, knowing that tales are as nourishing in their own way as the food. Then he decides to lighten the mood further. In my travels, I did spend a night once in a ruined tower that was said to be haunted, he says conspiratorially, leaning forward. Bet the scullery maid's eyes go big. What happened? She asks in a whisper. The minstrel grins. In a soft storyteller's voice, he describes how he slept in an abandoned stone tower where locals claimed a ghost roamed. He paints the scene, wind whistling through cracks, strange moans, which he mimics to Bet's wide-eyed delight, echoing in the dark. Marion and Mistress Agnes pause their eating to listen, amused by the minstrel's theatrics. At the climactic moment, Alan reveals the ghost was nothing more than an owl nesting in the rafters that nearly scared him out of his boots with its sudden hooting. Everyone chuckles softly, relief and humor mingling. Marion covers her mouth to stifle a laugh that might wake those above. Bet giggles, one hand clutched to her chest. Oh mercy, an owl, she says under her breath. They all share a smile at how imagination can run wild in the darkness. Seeing Bet still looking a bit wide-eyed despite her laughter, Alan kindly adds, "Let me tell you a kinder story for sweeter dreams." In a soothing tone, he spins a little fable about a lonely queen comforted by a nightingale's song. He speaks of how the little bird sang each midnight, driving away the queen's fears until she could sleep in peace. His voice lilts like a lullaby itself. By the tale's end, Bet's tense shoulders have relaxed, and she's nodding sleepily, the earlier fright forgotten. Mistress Agnes lets out a contented sigh. Thank the Lord for a good day and a good meal, she says, contentedly patting her stomach. Now let's all get some rest. Morning comes quickly. She pats Marion on the shoulder gently, a gesture of thanks for the younger woman's help throughout the day, and then heads off to her bed. The cook's quarters are a tiny room adjoining the kitchen, so that she can be on hand early each morning. She carries a small candle in a holder to light her way, and as she opens the door to her room, she calls softly, "Don't forget to bank the kitchen fire and lock the larder door, Marion." "I won't forget," Marion responds dutifully. This, too, is part of the nightly routine. They keep the pantry locked not only to keep rodents out, but also, truth be told, to prevent any midnight snacking by hungry servants that could deplete valuable stores. Long ago, Marion had heard a story of a kitchen boy caught stealing a pot of dripping in the night for a treat. Hence the cook's diligence now. Bet has already curled up on a blanket by the hearth. She sleeps there most nights, preferring the warmth to the drafty attic room that some of the younger servants share. Within moments, the girl is dozing, the events of the day no doubt playing in her dreams. Marion looks around the kitchen one last time. The flagstone floor is still a bit damp from where she scrubbed it earlier, and the wooden work surfaces are clean. Copper pots hang gleaming in the low light. Satisfied, she moves to the larder, a cool closet-like room off the kitchen, and checks that its door is firmly latched. Inside, she knows, wheels of cheese and sacks of flour are safe from nibbling mice and midnight munchers alike. She then takes a ceramic bowl and goes to the small crock of fresh cream that was brought in from the dairy today. She carefully pours a little water on top of the cream and places a cloth over it, an old trick to keep it from spoiling by morning. Alan watches these tasks with interest, finishing the last bite of pastry. He stands to help Marion when he sees her hefting a heavy iron lid to put over the open stew pot. "Here, allow me," he says quietly, and together they cover the pot to bank the heat. He notices the weariness in Marion's eyes now that the day's adrenaline is fading. "It's been a long day for you, hasn't it?" he says kindly. She nods, wiping her hands on her apron. "A long day, yes, but a good one. Nights like this make it worthwhile. Everyone fed and content, no crises." She gives a small smile. "And your music was a real treat for us all." Alan ducks his head modestly. "I'm happy if it brought a bit of joy. I'll be on my way tomorrow, so this has been a fine memory to take with me." "You'll have safe travels. I'll pray for that," Marion says earnestly. Her hospitable nature extends to a genuine concern for a traveler's well-being. Outside, the wind abates for a moment, leaving a serene silence hanging over the castle. Marion picks up a little clay oil lamp from the table and lights its wick from one of the wall lamps. This hand lamp will guide her through the darkness to her sleeping place. The tiny flame flares, then settles to a steady glow. The kitchen now is mostly dark. Only 2 wall lamps remain lit, and Marion lowers their wicks to dim them further. Enough light to find one's way, but not so much as to waste oil or risk a fire. Alan takes this as his cue to retire as well. He retrieves his loot case and slings it over his shoulder. "Where should I?" he begins to ask. Marion points toward a door that leads to an adjoining storeroom. "There's a straw mattress in there for you, just against the wall. It's quiet and a bit warmer than the drafty hall. You can lay your head there tonight. It isn't a grand accommodation, just a simple pallet used by one of the stable lads on cold nights. But to Alan it is more than sufficient." "You have my thanks," the minstrel says, sincere in his gratitude. He offers a slight bow, which Marion returns with a friendly nod. "Good night, Master Alan," she whispers. "Good night, Marion," he replies gently. Alan opens the storeroom door and slips inside. In the darkness, he fumbles until his hands find the promised mattress and wool blanket. A faint smell of hay and leather surrounds him from the stored goods. Settling down, he releases a slow sigh of contentment. Through a high slit of a window in the storeroom, a bit of the night sky is visible. He can see a single bright star twinkling. He silently thanks his lucky star for leading him to this castle on this night. Within moments, weary from travel and soothed by the full stomach and warmth, Alan drifts into a deep sleep, the straw mattress rustling softly as he shifts to find a comfortable spot. Marion, meanwhile, takes one last look around the kitchen. The embers in the hearth glow a dim red, providing just enough light to see by. Bet's gentle snores rise from the bundle she makes on the floor. All is as it should be. Marion quietly steps out of the kitchen, closing the heavy door behind her. The corridor is dark, but her little lamp casts a golden circle at her feet. She walks slowly, mindful of the silence that now pervades the castle. Her own sleeping quarters lie up a narrow flight of wooden stairs to a small loft above the pantry, which she shares with two other young maidservants. As she climbs the stairs, the lamp in her hand creates shifting shadows on the stone walls. The staircase is enclosed and a bit stuffy. The scent of flour and dried herbs stored nearby lingers in the air. Each step creaks familiarly. At the top, she enters the tiny loft. It's a simple space with a low ceiling, just enough room for 3 straw-filled pallets laid out side by side with rough woolen blankets for each. A single arrow-slit window lets in a slice of the night's darkness. One of Marion's roommates, Clara, is already there, sitting up sleepily, as if she had been waiting for Marion's return. "You've finally come," the girl whispers with a yawn. Clara's dark hair is braided for sleep, and she rubs her eyes. The third roommate, Bess, is still downstairs, finishing some chore, or perhaps dozing by the fire like Bet did. "All done," Marion replies softly. She sets her lamp on a tiny wall niche that serves as a shelf, and its gentle glow illuminates the humble room. Clara lays back down and soon drifts off, leaving Marion quietly changing out of her work dress. She shivers as she removes the heavy apron. The loft is colder than the kitchen, and only their shared body warmth and the blankets will keep it tolerable until morning. She quickly dons a simple linen shift and stockings and slips under her blanket. Marion blows out the oil lamp, plunging the loft into darkness. At first, it seems absolute, but as her eyes adjust, she can just make out the pale outline of the little window and the vaguest shapes of the rafters above. She pulls the blanket up to her chin and curls on her side, tucking her hands under her cheek. In the quiet, her mind wanders over the day's events, the satisfactions of seeing the Lord and Lady pleased, the sweet music from the minstrel that still rings in her memory, and the warmth of fellowship in the kitchen. As she begins to drift off, Marion listens to the subtler sounds that only emerge late at night. She hears a muffled thump from somewhere below, likely the last servant shutting a door or a stray cat knocking something over in pursuit of a mouse. Through the window slit comes the distant cry of a night bird, and far beyond the castle, perhaps the howling of a wolf carried on the wind from the distant forest. These could be eerie sounds, but Marion feels safe within the stout walls of the castle. She remembers how frightened she used to be of such noises when she was a little girl at home, when the only thing between her and the vast dark night was a thin cottage door. Here, she has stone and iron on her side, not to mention armed guards and watchful eyes. The thought comforts her. Before sleep claims her, Marion offers a final sleepy prayer into the darkness. A simple, "God keep us through the night." In her half-dreaming state, images flit through her mind. She imagines her family back home, snug around their hearth. She imagines the Virgin Mary in the chapel window, holding a lantern that glows softly to guide the night. She sees the kind face of Lady Isabella nodding in thanks at supper. These gentle thoughts accompany her into slumber. Soon, Marian is fast asleep, her breathing slow and even, joining the chorus of quiet breaths that is the castle's population at rest. She dreams lightly of simpler times. She sees her family's cottage in summer, sunlight streaming through the open door, her little sisters laughing as they chase a chicken in the yard. In the dream, Marian finds herself sitting under the big oak tree by the cottage, listening to the distant church bell and feeling a warm breeze on her face. The night's chill and darkness are far away. All is light, warm, and safe in this hazy, memory-turned dream. A faint smile forms on her sleeping face as the pleasant images play out. Elsewhere in the quiet castle, a lone candle burns in the nursery. The castle's nursemaid, a matronly woman named Margaret, keeps watch over Lord Robert and Lady Isabella's infant son. The baby boy lies in a wooden cradle near the hearth of the small nursery chamber. The fire there has been kept low, but gives off enough heat to warm the room gently. Around midnight, the child stirs with a soft whimper. Margaret, who sleeps lightly on a cot in the same room, is at his side in moments. She lifts the infant from the cradle, cradling him against her shoulder. In the hush, she checks and finds that he is merely restless and not in distress. Likely he just felt a bit cold or peckish. The nursemaid sits in a rocking chair by the faint glow of the embers and begins to hum a lullaby, while gently swaying with the baby in her arms. Her voice is a low, comforting murmur in the still night. It's an old tune she hums, one her mother sang to her long ago about starlight and guardian angels. The baby fusses for a minute, tiny cries scarcely louder than a kitten's mewl, but soon Margaret's experienced gentle rhythm works a calming magic. The little one nestles into her woolen shawl, eyes closing again as the lullaby surrounds him with familiarity and warmth. Margaret softly smiles and whispers, "There, there, sweet lamb, all is well." She continues to rock a few minutes more until the infant is sound asleep once more, his small mouth slightly open in innocent slumber. Carefully she stands and lays him back in the cradle, tucking a soft quilt around his tiny form. The baby sighs and remains asleep, his face peaceful. The nursemaid checks the room. The shutters are secure. The draft has been kept out by a rolled blanket at the threshold. Satisfied that her charge is comfortable, she adds one more piece of fuel to the fireplace to ensure the room stays warm enough until morning. The flames glow a little brighter, illuminating her kind face as she watches the child for another moment. With a nod to herself, Margaret returns to her cot. She does not let the candle burn out entirely. Instead, she places it in a safe holder with a conical snuffer hovering above it to contain the light, but keep a tiny flame alive. A dim golden halo seeps out, just enough that she could see the outline of the cradle if she awoke again. Many believed that keeping a small light burning could ward off wandering spirits, or at least help one find their way in the dark. And though Margaret is not overly superstitious, she finds comfort in the little light. Soon, the nursery is quiet once more. The baby sleeps soundly, and the nursemaid dozes, ever attuned to the child's breathing. The faint melody of the lullaby seems to linger in the air like a blessing. In the adjoining master chamber, Lady Isabella and Lord Robert slumber on, undisturbed. Perhaps some gentle fragment of the lullaby even threads into Lady Isabella's dreams, painting them with the same serenity that now fills the nursery. Within these thick castle walls, even the smallest and most vulnerable are watched over through the long night, swaddled in care and tenderness until the morning light returns. Midnight approaches, and the castle lies in profound quiet. On the ramparts, guarded Thomas completes what will be his final circuit before trading places with the next watch. His boots scuff softly along the stone walkway as he moves to the guard post overlooking the main gate. The wind has calmed for the moment, and in the stillness, Thomas can hear the faint rustle of his chainmail with each step and the distant hoot of an owl out on the fields. At a corner tower, a covered lantern hangs from a hook, its tiny flame shielded by horn panels, casting just a dim glow. Thomas stops here and peers out through an embrasure, a narrow slit in the stone, to scan the open land beyond the moat. It is a moonless part of the night now. The crescent moon has already set. He sees nothing but blackness and the vague outlines of treetops against the starry sky. All's well, as he reported to the steward earlier. There is a deep sense of solitude on the wall, but Thomas is trained not to let that solitude tip into loneliness or fear. He touches the hilt of his sheathed sword, the solid iron a reassurance of his role and capability. From the opposite end of the wall walk, a small bobbing light appears, another lantern. It is carried by Peter, the younger guard assigned to relieve Thomas. Peter comes toward the tower, footsteps quick but quiet. Thomas is mildly surprised. He hadn't realized the hour had flown by so swiftly in the dark serenity. When Peter reaches him, Thomas can see the boy's face in the lantern glow, ruddy cheeks and eager eyes, a bit bright perhaps, from having just woken from an early night's sleep. "All quiet?" Peter asks in a hushed tone. "All quiet," Thomas confirms. They speak softly, almost automatically lowering their voices out of respect for the sleeping castle around and below them. Sound carries oddly at night. Even a normal tone might echo off the stone and disturb someone's rest. Peter sets his lantern down on the ledge, and the two men stand together for a moment, looking out over the battlements. The transition of watch is a brief overlap, where two pairs of eyes scan the darkness as one. Thomas points toward the north field, where the faint outlines of haystacks can just be made out. "I saw a fox run across near the hay earlier," he mentions. "Gave me a start at first, until I realized what it was. Other than that, nothing moving." Peter nods, suppressing a yawn. He is new to night watch, and still adjusting to the upside-down rhythm of sleeping by day and waking at odd hours. Thomas remembers that feeling and gives the lad an encouraging pat on the shoulder. "Keep your cloak wrapped tight. The wind bites along the west wall, and if you get troubled by the silence, hum a tune or say a prayer. It helps." Peter smiles appreciatively. In truth, the silence can play tricks on his mind sometimes. The old guards, like Thomas, seem unbothered, but Peter occasionally finds himself jumping at shadows. He is grateful for the advice. "I will," he says. As Thomas turns to go, Peter asks quietly, "Do you ever see anything strange at night up here?" Thomas tilts his head curiously. "Strange?" Peter shrugs, a little embarrassed. "You know, people say nights in castles can be haunted." He casts a glance over his shoulder at the dark expanse of the wall and courtyard. Old ghosts walking the ramparts and such. Thomas's face cracks into a kind, knowing grin. He remembers being a young recruit with similar questions. "I've walked these walls more nights than I can count," he says, gently, "and I've yet to meet a ghost. The only spirits I know of come in a flask." He taps the small flask of cordial that he carries for warmth, making Peter chuckle softly. "Most of the time," Thomas continues, "the scariest thing you'll encounter is your own reflection in the lantern light, or a barn owl looking for mice. That, and if you doze off, perhaps the captain's hand on your shoulder come to catch you." He winks. Peter exhales, tension easing from his shoulders. "Right. I suppose the stories get to me sometimes. The darkness makes imagined monsters out of bushes." Thomas nods. "It's normal. Our minds are lively things. But remember, this castle is strong and watched over by us and," he gestures upward briefly, "by heaven too, if it please God. You'll do fine." Reassured, Peter straightens up. Thomas returns the lantern to him and gives a final look around. The watch change is done. It is time for Thomas to rest. "Good night, then," Thomas whispers. "Good night," Peter replies. They clasp hands briefly in camaraderie, and then Thomas descends a nearby spiral stair that leads down from the wall. His parting footsteps echo softly, then fade as he heads for the small barracks near the gate. There, in a dim room, he finds a straw mattress, already occupied by two dozing comrades. Smiling to himself, Thomas carefully eases down to share the pallet, pulling his cloak over him. The other men barely stir, accustomed to tight quarters. In moments, Thomas is stretched out shoulder to shoulder with his fellow guards, their quiet snoring and the familiar smell of wool and leather comforting in the darkness. He shuts his eyes, the weariness of the night finally catching up with him, and joins them in well-earned sleep. Now alone on the ramparts, Peter adjusts his sword belt and pulls his cloak tighter as Thomas advised. The young guard takes a deep breath of the cold night air and slowly releases it, watching it cloud in front of him. Overhead, the river of stars known as the Milky Way arches across the sky. In his village they call it the White Road of Heaven, and he's heard others name it the Road of St. James, guiding pilgrims by night. Peter marvels at its silent splendor. He easily picks out the familiar seven-star pattern of the plow among the constellations, and the sight of that constant friend in the sky steadies him. He begins his watch by walking the length of the wall, lantern in one hand, the other hand resting on the pommel of his sheathed sword. As he walks, he quietly hums the melody of the lullaby the minstrel sang earlier in the evening. He pauses now and then to shift his weight and stamp his feet gently, not out of fear, but to keep the blood flowing in the chill. The late autumn cold nips at his nose and ears, but his layered wool clothes and constant movement hold warmth close. He peers over the battlements at the shadowy courtyard inside the walls. Wool seems still. The outlines of buildings are dark lumps, save for one faint light from a servant moving with a lamp. Perhaps Marian on her way to the loft, though Peter cannot know who it is at this distance. The light disappears, and the courtyard is lightless again. Beyond the castle, Peter's gaze travels to the village below. Unlike the castle, no torches or lanterns speckle the village lanes at this hour. The only sign of life is a thin ribbon of smoke rising straight up from one cottage chimney. Likely the cottage's hearth has been banked for the night, and the last of the heat escapes into the sky. Peter knows the village well. He was a farmer's son before joining the castle garrison. He can picture each little house in his mind as he looks at the dark shapes. In one of them, his very own parents and siblings are surely fast asleep. He remembers how it was at home. Nightfall meant gathering by the fire with a simple porridge or stew, then straight to bed soon after, because candles were a luxury they couldn't afford to burn for long. They all slept in one room on a straw mattress, his younger brother often hogging the blanket. If one person stirred, everyone might wake for a moment, then drift back to sleep to the comforting sound of the cow shifting in her stall adjacent to the living space. In winter, his father sometimes kept a young goat or a few chickens inside to keep them from freezing, and their quiet clucking or bleating would blend with the human snores. Compared to those crowded, earthy nights, the castle's stone halls felt almost vast and empty at first. Peter smiles to himself, thinking that despite the draft and the hard pallet he sleeps on now, at least he doesn't have a chicken roosting above his head these days. Taking in the odors of a sturdy stable probably wasn't so bad. At that same moment, in one of those dark cottages below the castle, a simple farmer stirs from his sleep. Inside a one-room hut, lit only by the dull red glow of a few embers on the hearth, a peasant farmer named Tom lifts his head from his straw mattress. A distant howl of a wolf has roused him. He listens intently in the darkness. The sound is far off in the woods, but instinct and years of caution wake him whenever such cries echo in the night. Beside him on the mattress, his wife Marjorie murmurs sleepily, "All well?" She pulls their threadbare wool blanket up, covering their two youngest children curled at their feet. In the corner of the room, on a rough pallet near the gently snoring piglet they've brought inside for warmth, their eldest boy shifts but does not wake. Tom rises slowly, careful not to disturb the precariously slumbering household. The dirt floor is cool under his feet as he pads to the hearth. With a blackened iron poker, he stirs the ashes gently, exposing a flicker of orange. He feeds the fire a few dry reeds and a small piece of wood. It isn't much. Fuel is precious and nearly spent at winter's end, but the tiny flame that blooms so gives a comforting light. Shadows dance on the wattle and daub walls, illuminating bundles of dried herbs and a simple wooden crucifix hanging above the door. Another distant wolf cry sounds, but Tom feels a measure of reassurance, knowing the castle watch is vigilant up on the hill. He crosses himself and whispers a quick prayer under his breath, something his mother taught him years ago. "Lord, ward off the beasts and evils of this night." His wife, half awake, quietly echoes, "Amen," from the bed. Tom peers out through a small opening in the shutter. From his cottage, he can just make out the silhouette of the great castle against the starry sky. A faint light gleams on the ramparts, perhaps a moving torch of a guard making rounds. Seeing that tiny beacon, the farmer feels comfort. The Lord's men are out there, and the castle stands like a protective giant, watching over its little village. With a sigh, Tom returns to the mattress and lies back down. Marjorie nestles against him, their children a warm tangle at their sides. The fire's renewed glow casts a gentle reddish hue over the family. In this humble home, there are no thick walls or sentries, only a latched wooden door and a faithful dog sleeping outside it. But within these walls, there is love and trust. As the wolf's howls fade into the night, the family drifts back into sleep, secure in the belief that dawn will come and the castle on the hill will keep its silent watch until then. Returning his gaze to the fields, Peter resumes his vigil along the battlements. He leans against the cold parapet and listens. In the distance, so faint he almost doubts it, he hears a solitary bell chime from far away, perhaps from a distant monastery marking the midnight office of prayer. The single toll fades into the darkness, leaving Peter with a sense of kinship, as if somewhere beyond the hills monks too are awake, keeping holy watch in their own way. He returns his focus to the castle now and listens again. The silence of midnight is profound. It's as if the whole world holds its breath. In that silence, subtle sounds become noticeable. He hears water trickling in the castle, while in the courtyard, an ever-present murmur. He hears the faint flapping of a loose shutter somewhere below, which settles after a gust. Far above, the slightest whisper of wind returns, sighing through the merlons of the battlements. It almost sounds like a distant, soothing song. Inside the castle, all its inhabitants have finally succumbed to sleep, except for a few scattered watchers like Peter. The castle itself seems to be sleeping. Timbers occasionally creak as they cool in the night air, much like a living creature exhaling. Peter quietly continues his patrol, leaving the tower and pacing along the wall walk again to keep warm and alert. Now and then, he pauses to listen or to gaze at the stars which wheel slowly overhead. But nothing unusual stirs. The vast silence and darkness of the midnight hour hold no threat tonight, only a gentle, solemn beauty. Down below, the castle's courtyards and chambers are dark and peaceful. Those thick walls, which by day ring with voices and activity, now embrace the stillness. It is as if the castle and all within it breathe in unison, resting, gathering strength for the dawn to come. And on the ramparts, Peter keeps watch, a lone guardian in the night, humming his soft tune to the rhythm of his steps, faithfully keeping the quiet vigil until morning's first light. In the small guest chamber, Brother Matthew lies on the simple rope-strung bed under the layers of blankets, pleasantly warm now thanks to the extra cover the steward provided. He had fallen asleep easily after the soothing Compline prayers and the rare comfort of a full meal. Yet as a monk, his body is attuned to the rhythms of the monastic hours. And so, in the deep of night, he finds himself drifting into semi-wakefulness. A sliver of moonlight peeks through the high, narrow window of his chamber, casting a pale stripe on the floor. Brother Matthew opens his eyes. The rest of the room is pitch dark, save for that gentle glow. For a moment, he does not move. He listens to the silence, broken only by the distant sounds of the wind outside, and perhaps, if he concentrates, the faint chiming in his memory of the abbey bells that would be summoning monks to matins at around this hour. Here, of course, no bell rings at midnight. The castle sleeps on. Feeling a stirring of devotion, Brother Matthew slowly sits up in his bed. The air in the chamber is cold on his face, but he wraps a bit of the blanket around his shoulders. In the darkness, He begins to whisper a prayer, an office he knows by heart. Domine, labia mea apris, et os meum annuntiabit laudem tuam. He murmurs, O Lord, open my lips, and my mouth shall proclaim your praise. It is the traditional beginning of this midnight office. His voice is barely audible, but the act of praying at this hour connects him to his fellow monks far away, who even now might be chanting in a candlelit choir stall. He recites psalm verses that rise naturally to his lips. In pace in edipsum dormium et requiescam, he whispers, quoting the psalmist. In peace I will lie down and sleep at once. The words echo softly in the small chamber. Brother Matthew then allows a brief smile as another thought of his monastery comes. He recalls how, back at his abbey, at this same deep hour of night, a bell would summon the monks from their straw pallets. He pictures the long line of brothers processing with candles in hand through the drafty stone corridors toward the chapel. There, they would sing matins in low, harmonious chants that echoed off the vaulted ceilings. Brother Matthew can almost feel the cold flagstones under his feet and smell the familiar traces of incense lingering in the wooden choir stalls. Though he is far from those cloisters now, the idea that his brethren are keeping vigil at this very moment makes him feel connected and comforted. For several minutes, Brother Matthew remains like this, a small figure hunched on a bed, speaking quietly into the void, his words turning the still chamber into a sacred space. When he finishes his improvised midnight vigil, a sense of profound peace fills him. The world is so quiet that he feels as if he's the only soul awake in it. Yet he knows he is not alone. His thoughts drift to his home abbey. At this same hour, he imagines the bell there must be tolling to summon the monks for matins. In his mind's eye, he sees a familiar procession of hooded figures gliding by candlelight through the cloister, breath rising in the chill as they make their way to the chapel. He can almost smell the faint incense clinging to their woolen cowls and hear the soft shuffle of sandals on the flagstones. They would be chanting the psalms now in unison, voices low and steady under the arches. The vision of his brothers keeping vigil comforts him deeply, a reminder that many souls pray together under the same sky. In the silence, he feels the presence of the divine as surely as he feels the cold stone under his bare feet when he stands briefly to stretch. He moves to the little window and stands on tiptoe to peer out. From here, he has a limited view, a slice of the sky studded with stars, and a partial view of the inner courtyard far below. He sees a single faint glow moving along the battlements, likely the guard making his rounds with a lantern. Brother Matthew offers another quick, silent blessing for that guard, that he may stay alert and safe through the night. The monk then returns to bed, lying down once more and pulling the blankets up. The mattress of straw rustles softly beneath him. He is glad for the warmth and softness. It is a far cry from the wooden board he sometimes sleeps on during austere nights at the monastery. In just a few hours, this castle will stir and awaken. Brother Matthew allows himself to rest a bit more until then, feeling content. He closes his eyes, his breath slowing, and in the quiet of the guest chamber, he drifts back into a gentle sleep as the stars above continue their silent course. Night's reign gradually yields to the approach of dawn. In the eastern sky beyond the castle, a faint silver-gray light begins to grow, so gentle at first that it does not yet disturb those asleep. But nature knows that morning is coming. The rooster in the castle's chicken coop is the first to give voice. He lets out a sharp crow that pierces the silence, then another. Down in the village, other roosters answer in kind, their calls echoing faintly up the hill. Guard Peter, still pacing the battlements, stops and leans on his spear as he catches the first cock crow. A small smile touches his lips. The night is nearly over and all has been well. In the faint pre-dawn light, the world around the castle slowly takes shape again from the darkness. The outlines of distant trees emerge, and the grassy fields turn from black to gray-green. Wisps of mist have gathered over the low ground by the river, and now become visible, ghostly ribbons drifting in the early light. A delicate frost blankets the meadow beyond the castle, each blade of grass edged in white that glints as the light strengthens. Thin wisps of mist on the low ground begin to glow with morning's hue. One by one, the stars wink out as the sky grows lighter. The morning star, bright and solitary, glimmers for a while longer on the horizon. Peter gazes at it and makes a silent wish, something simple, like good fortune for the day ahead, or perhaps a prayer for his family's well-being in the village below. Then he continues his vigilant walk until his shifts end, heartened by the signs of dawn. Within the castle, the transition from night to day begins subtly. In the kitchen, the hearth's embers have cooled to a dim red. Bet, the scullery maid sleeping by the ashes, instinctively curls tighter in her blanket as the warmth dissipates. But soon, Mistress Agnes stirs in her little chamber off the kitchen. Years of habit wake her before the sun. She rises, achy but resolute, and throws a shawl around her shoulders. Striking flint to steel, she lights a taper from the last ember in a small covered brazier she kept alive through the night. With that flame, she kindles a lamp and then the kitchen fire, feeding it to dry kindling and coaxing it until orange flames lick the new logs. The sudden crackle and light cause Bet to yawn and sit up, blinking. The scullery maid immediately moves to assist the cook. Without words, the two begin the morning routine. Bet grabs the long iron peel and checks the bread oven built into the side of the hearth, feeling its warmth. The oven has cooled overnight, so Mistress Agnes will need a fresh fire inside it to bake the morning bread. She sets to work shoveling some coals and kindling into the oven chamber. Soon, smoke curls out and a new fire is alight, filling the kitchen with the comforting smell of wood smoke anew. In the loft above the pantry, a soft rustling can be heard as Marian and her roommates rouse themselves from sleep. The first to wake is Clara, who always hears the rooster before the others. She nudges Marian gently. Marian opens her eyes to the semi-darkness, feeling the slight chill of early morning air on her face where it peeks out from under the blanket. She hears the activity below, muffled clanks and footsteps, and knows the cook is already up. With a quiet groan and a stretch, Marian pushes aside her blanket. Though she slept soundly, morning seems to come quickly. Yet as her bare feet touch the cold wooden floor, she recalls the pleasant events of the night before and smiles to herself. Across the castle, in the guest chamber, Brother Matthew awakes to the dim glow of dawn creeping into his window. His internal clock, tuned by years of monastic life, often wakes him at this holy hour. He sits up and gives thanks for a safe night in his prayers. Wasting little time, he dons his sandals and wraps his brown cloak around him. There is a custom among some monks to greet the sunrise with a hymn, and though he is alone here, Brother Matthew softly sings a line or two of an old chant as he prepares to head to the chapel. Aurora lucis rudilat, caelum laudibus intonet. The dawn's light reddens the sky, the heavens resound with praise. His gentle voice is scarcely above a whisper, but it fills him with quiet joy as he steps out into the corridor. The castle's chapel welcomes him in cool silence, still shadowy before full daylight. He lights a fresh candle on the altar to illuminate the missal, then begins to recite the dawn prayers of lauds. His voice is the first human voice to break the night's fast of silence within these walls, and it is a prayerful, hopeful sound. In the courtyard, a stable hand named Owen is already up as well. He shuffles into the stable, greeted by soft nickers from the horses, who sense him coming with feed. The air is crisp and carries the faint smells of dew and hay. Owen grabs a wool cloak off a peg. The morning chill is sharp, and then hauls a bucket of oats to each stall. The horses crunch contentedly, steam rising from their nostrils in the coolness. Owen pats the flank of one dapple gray mare who nickers softly at his presence. Overhead in the rafters of the stable, a pair of pigeons stir from their sleep and begin to coo, sensing the coming day. As he works, the eastern sky blooms from gray to pale pink, the herald of sunrise. High on the ramparts, Peter catches sight of one of the day shift guards emerging from the stairwell, rubbing his eyes and buckling on his sword belt. It's Thomas again, refreshed after just a few hours' sleep. Peter waves to him and calls quietly. Morning. Thomas returns the wave and smiles, the early light revealing his breath and puffs. Anything to report? He asks as he joins Peter on the wall, though he likely expects all was well. Not a thing, Peter responds cheerfully. He feels a camaraderie with Thomas, having shared the duty of protecting their sleeping neighbors through the dark. Below them in the castle, a thin plume of smoke from the kitchen chimney catches the first sunlight, a sign that breakfast will soon be on its way. All quiet and peaceful, praise be, Peter adds. He hands over the lantern and the responsibility to Thomas, who nods appreciatively. You did well, Thomas says, clapping the younger man on the back. Now get you to the barracks and catch a bit more sleep if you can, or Mistress Agnes will put you to work turning the meat spit for breakfast. He chuckles. Peter grins and, with a last look at the pastel colors spreading in the sky, heads down the steps, relief and accomplishment mingling in his heart. The night he watched over has ended without incident. In the noble chambers, the change is subtle but inevitable. The darkness behind Lady Isabella's closed bed curtains lightens imperceptibly. Inside that cozy canopy, Lady Isabella still slumbers, her dreams gentle and untroubled. Perhaps in her mind she walks through a summer meadow at twilight, or hears her child's laughter mingled with birdsong. Lord Robert lies beside her, sleeping soundly as well, one arm protectively over his wife, even in rest. It is only when a ray of early sun peeks through a crack in the shutter and falls in a golden line across the chamber floor that Lady Isabella's eyes flutter open. She blinks at the soft daylight filtering around the edges of the curtains. For a moment, she listens. The castle is still mostly quiet, but she catches faint signs of life. The distant clatter of the kitchen starting the morning meal, a cow lowing from the barns, and the echo of Brother Matthew's chant from the chapel carried lightly through the holes. These sounds bring a smile of comfort to her lips, the familiar sounds of a new day beginning. Carefully, so as not to wake her husband, Lady Isabella draws back the bed curtain nearest her just a few inches. Cool, fresh air greets her, and through the partially opened shutter, she can see a sliver of pink dawn sky. Morning has come. She offers a silent prayer of gratitude that the night passed safely, for her family, for the servants, for the village beyond. All slept under the castle's protective watch, and she believes, under the watch of Providence as well. Soon, the castle will be fully awake. Fires will be stoked high, breakfast prepared. The great hall will ring again with voices and footsteps. But in this gentle moment, the boundary between night and day, there lingers a magical hush. The last stars fade as the sun's bright edge breaks over the horizon, sending out beams of light that strike the highest tower of the castle first, then spread warmth down the cold stones. Lady Isabella closes the bed curtain again softly and lies back for a final few minutes of peace beside her husband. She savors the comfortable weight of the blankets and the knowledge that all is well. In the quiet of their chamber, she can feel the promise of the new day filtering in with the morning light. Throughout the castle, others sense it too. Marian, now dressed and on her way down to help knead dough, poses to glance through a narrow window at the rosy dawn. Brother Matthew concludes his dawn prayers with the Benedictus, feeling hopeful for what the daylight will bring. Edwin the steward, awakened by the stirrings of the household, swings his legs out of bed and heaves a satisfied sigh, ready to take up the day's duties that come after a peaceful night. The medieval night has given way to morning, as it always does, but those hours of darkness were not empty or idle. They were filled with the soft tapestry of castle life at night, the hushed prayers, the glowing hearths, the vigilant watch, the whispered lullabies, and the dreams that bridged yesterday and tomorrow. These ancient stone walls have seen uncounted nights like this one, nights where lamps glow softly against the dark, where faithful souls keep watch and weary ones find rest. In medieval Europe, each night is a time of both vulnerability and comfort, when fears are eased by prayers and fires, and dreams are nurtured under protective eaves. As the castle's inhabitants awaken to daylight, the memory of the night's gentle embrace remains with them. When evening comes again, as it always does, the same rituals will unfold anew. Candles will be lit against the dusk, hearths will be stoked, humble suppers shared, and lullabies sung. Within these walls there will be warmth and vigilance, faith and fellowship to carry all through the darkness. And beyond, in quiet villages, families will huddle and trust in the dawn to come. Thus, night after night, the people of this land live out a quiet story of hope and respite. The darkness is never feared for long, for they know that morning's light will always return, and with it, the promise of a new day.